Trump is really echoing what we heard from him yesterday before he left the courthouse when he was convicted guilty of 34 of these crimes, making him first former president to be a felon that is going to also be running for the 2024 presidential election. One piece of news is that we heard it from him that he will be appealing this. That was expected. His lawyers have said that. But we should note, Ed, he made a number of assertions that were false, talking about that this was all done by the White House, by Biden. He says the government got everything it wanted. He says the issue is not a legal expense. Per the jury, they viewed this, that this was a falsification of that expense to impact the election, the falsification of those documents per the 12 jurors. So there's a number of assertions the former president made that does not have evidence and are false. He will be, though, using this, and you can see he really wanted to pivot to how much money his campaign was able to bring in, about $35 million following the verdict yesterday. And per the campaign note, they say about 30% of those donors were first-time contributors to the platform. So you can get a sense of how Donald Trump is going to campaign into November, talking about that he thinks, and the assertions he's going to continue to make, is that this was political and unjustified.
Trump was convicted on state, not federal charges. Important because whatever happened in November, that would mean he could not pardon himself, David. The other piece of news I heard is that he had wanted to testify during that trial and gave reasons why he would not. David, your reaction?
Yeah, and you'll forgive me, it's getting a bit noisy here as we have protesters and supporters of Donald Trump kind of near me yelling at one another, so forgive me if I have any trouble hearing you, Ed. But yes, I mean, I thought that line was particularly interesting to me. He said that he would have loved to testify. Of course, Donald Trump did have the opportunity to do that, as any criminal defendant does in a courtroom, and he declined to do that. You know, to echo what Anne-Marie was saying just a moment ago, I mean, there were a lot of familiar grievances here. I would call it a director's cut of the complaints that we heard from Donald Trump during the course of the trial. You know, he would go downstairs in the courtroom during the lunch break and he would complain about the judge and the proceedings, and his time was limited. Here in Trump Tower, in the atrium of Trump Tower, he had as much time as he'd like, and he was able to go into this in a lot more detail. There were some winding, discursive moments during which he talked about a friend of his whom he didn't identify, who had a run-in with this judge, Juan Merchan, said that the judge, again, had a vendetta. So there was the same kind of invective and criticism of the judge. I thought something else that was fascinating in light of that was Donald Trump saying he is still under this gag order. That was something I think that was a bit uncertain after the verdict was rendered yesterday. He's still under that gag order, and really did the same kind of tap dancing and tiptoeing around that. He was not shy about criticizing Juan Merchan again, the judge who is going to sentence Donald Trump on the 11th of July, really not holding back as he criticized him and how he ran the courtroom. And I'll say he talked a lot about Michael Cohen. I was particularly interested in this part of the comments from the former president as well, taking issue with the fact that it's now become common for people to refer to him as Donald Trump's fixer. He said that was a creation of the media. It was not his. He thought of him as a lawyer. Of course, Michael Cohen playing this role like Roy Cohn played earlier in history as somebody who did a lot more than just straight ahead legal work in a courtroom. But he was quite critical of Michael Cohen and what he had to say. And as Anne-Marie said, I think that the emphasis that he placed on fundraising, the gratitude that he expressed to people who had given money to his campaign and affiliated groups in the hours since this verdict stands out, that's certainly something that's going to be part and parcel of both Donald Trump's campaign and Joe Biden's campaign going forward as this moves from sort of the legal arena into the political one, Ed.
Anne-Marie, this was highly political in the sense that it has been a long speech, but it opened with sort of broader political issues at the heart of this election. One thing that I want to focus on, he said that there's been a sort of an uptick or rise in New York City crime. The data doesn't support that, but it is, again, a core political issue in this election cycle.
It is, and it was an unfounded claim that the data doesn't support, but this is something that we do see show up in polls. by and far large, the economy still is #1 when it comes to this election. You could see that in poll after poll. Americans continue to cite the economy and notably inflation as their #1 concern. But you also see an uptick of issues like immigration and crime being on top of the agenda. And that's that fear that Trump is trying to tap into, that he does, and he's going to say that the Biden administration has not done enough when it comes to these issues, the economy, immigration, crime. We should also note, Ed, that one thing that Trump said yesterday, and I'm sure he'll reiterate as he's speaking now, and we heard from President Biden, is that really the verdict is going to be delivered by the American people on November 5th. They're using that to campaign. But that's what makes not just July 11th sentencing of the former president, but the debate that's coming just a few weeks before that at the end of June that CNN will be holding. This is the first time we're going to see these two individuals back on stage together, and they can make that pitch to the American people. Because when you look at the polling going into this verdict, it's a mixed bag on whether or not this conviction is going to land as a concern for those people in the middle that both Trump and Biden are trying to get to their side, to go out and vote for them. If this conviction is going to land in terms of whether or not that would mean they would not vote for former President Donald Trump.